come forward and kindly start the presentation. Over to you, Janvi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm the representative of the team. I'm Janvi, and I would like everybody to introduce themselves from all my team members. I am Janvi.
I am Kshitij.
I'm Pooja.
And I'm Divyansh.
So now that everybody has introduced themselves, I would like to start our presentation by starting with the topic human rights. We all have heard and read about human rights, but the question arises, what does it actually mean? Human rights are norms and principles that describe the certain standard of human behavior and are regularly protected as natural and legal rights. Some of the basic human rights are right to education, right to work, right to freedom, and right to equality. Some of these rights are also a part of a constitution, but still there's some sort of discrimination which takes place. So I would like Pooja to take over from here and talk about discrimination in detail.
Janvi, what are you doing? मेरे और क्षितिज क्यों मतलब है? How can you speak? Mostly we observe that women in our society are denied the basic right of decision making, and it is the man of the house who usually takes decisions for her. Where is the equality in this? Now I would like Pooja to take over from here and talk about discrimination.
Thank you, Divyansh. Discrimination. Discrimination is basically differentiating in decision-making and rights for two people on the basis of their age, caste, origin, nationality, etc. People, in order to satisfy their ego and to feel superior, discriminate each other on the basis of age, caste, religion, race, disability, and gender. These are the most common type of discrimination we are facing from quite a long time. When nature doesn't discriminate men and women, then why we go against the nature of the law? Yes, I'm talking about gender discrimination. Gender discrimination refers to an unequal and unfair treatment of a person or an individual on the basis of their gender. India is a country where women are given the status of goddess. However, the problems they are facing shows quite opposite of the concept. They are treated unequally, they are abused, and also they are considered inferior. In early days, women faced a lot of problems, such as the Dasi system, Sati system, and no widow remarriaging. And nowadays also, they are facing a lot of problems, like child marriage, less access to education, marital rape, violence, dowry-related harassment, sexual abuse, and many more. Now let us take a case study. A student of Jamia Millia Islamia, Safora Jagor, was arrested. And as soon as she was arrested, the news of her being pregnant came out, and people started trolling her. Nobody ever said anything about the man with whom she got pregnant. After that, a man started linking her pregnancy to her religion and said she had sex before marriage and got pregnant. It is haram. Is it now allowed in Islam? And also, if she can give hate speeches while being pregnant, then she can easily handle the jail. This case shows how women are discriminated on the basis of gender and religion. Women are facing discrimination from generations, and this needs to end. This is the point where feminism came into picture. Now, I would like Kshitij to throw some light on the topic feminism.
Thank you so much, Pooja. So as Pooja mentioned, the hypocrisy of the society and how society has been discriminating women against women. So, and that's where feminism comes into picture. So I would be giving a brief introduction about feminism and what is feminism, and then I will be talking about the different waves of feminism as well. So according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, feminism is defined as the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. Now, the real question is, what does equality mean and how can it be achieved? So feminism means that women shall have at least as much to say as men about everything in the arrangement of human affairs, including especially the meaning, purpose, and activities of their own lives. feminism means the collective empowerment of women. In addition, women cannot achieve a collective empowerment without economic independence from men, full and gainful and meaningful employment, and the education and training required for it, and also freedom from poverty. Similarly, women's collective empowerment requires that women have control over their own bodies and all of the decisions affecting their reproductive capabilities, including full access to choices concerning contraception, abortion, childbirth, and pre- and postnatal care. Now that we know what feminism is, let us also try and understand when and why did feminism actually begin. So let's go back into the history and let's talk about the first wave of feminism. So the first wave feminism refers to the West's first sustained political movement dedicated to achieving political equality for women, the suffragettes of the late 19th and the early 20th century. Now, what do I mean when I say West? So West basically means the Western countries, for example, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Now, who are these suffragettes? Now, in 1870, the 15th Amendment was passed by the Congress, and the black men were given the right to vote. Now, white women thought that were they truly not going to be granted the right to vote before former slaves were? So for 70 years, so first these women turned suffragettes, and for 70 years, the first waivers, they would march, they would lecture, they would protest, they would face arrest, they would be ridiculed, and they would have to face violence, but they fought tooth and nail for the right to vote. Did they achieve anything out of this movement at all? Yes, indeed they did. As the movement developed, it began to turn to the question of reproductive rights in 1916. Margaret Sanger opened the first control clinic in the US. It was huge because it was in defiance of a New York state law that forbade the distribution of contraception. In 1920, Congress passed the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Now, in theory, it granted the right to vote to all women of all races. But in practice, it remained difficult for black women to vote. But anyway, this was the most important and the best outcome out of the movement. But again, the movement soon died down. And then in the early parts of the 1960s, second wave feminism emerged. Now, during the second wave feminism, the quote, "the personal is political," became quite famous. And the second wavers used this quote quite a lot. Now, this phrase cannot be traced back to any individual woman, but it was popularized by Carol Hanich. Now, the second wavers would go on to argue that problems that seem to be individual and petty about sex and relationships and access to abortions and domestic labor, they were in fact systemic and political and fundamental to the right for women's equality. Now, the second wavers had to fight for this. Did they achieve something out of this movement at all? Now, the movement did win some major legislative and legal victories. The Equal Pay Act of 1963, it theoretically outlawed the gender pay gap. A series of landmark Supreme Court cases through the 60s and 70s gave married and unmarried women the right to use birth control. Title IX gave women the right to educational equality, and in 1973, ROE versus Wade guaranteed women reproductive freedom. The second wave cared deeply about the casual, systemic sexism ingrained in the society. The belief that women's highest purposes were domestic and decorative, and the social standards that reinforced that belief were quashed and were ripped apart during the movement. But again, this movement too soon died down in the 1980s. Then came the third wave of feminism in the early parts of the 1990s. Now, this movement arose partially as a response to the perceived failures of and backlash against initiatives and movements created by second wave feminism during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and the perception that women are of many colors, ethnicities, nationalities, religions, and cultural backgrounds. This wave of feminism expands the topic of feminism to include a diverse group of women with a diverse set of identities. Now, this led to a new concept called intersectional feminism. So I'll just talk about intersectional feminism a bit here. Now, intersectional feminism recognizes that people have overlapping or intersecting social identities and related systems of operation, domination, or discrimination. People experience operation in varying configurations and in varying degrees, depending on their social location and context. For example, caste, class, and gender influence each other and intersect both. Intersectional feminism would recognize that a woman with disability experiences gender discrimination differently from a working class Dalit woman. Now that we have learned what intersectional feminism is, as now we have seen how and what feminism achieved in the West, let us understand or know what feminism achieved in India. So I'll talk about it in two different parts. So first, I'll talk about what feminism achieved in India in the 20th century. So in 1972, a case of a Mathura rape case got quite attention, and it was a major case, and it was a turning point. So because of this case, the sexual assault laws were changed. So Mathura's case was monumental, both from a social and legal perspective. It sparked public protest for the first time about rape in India, and it actually led to the reform of sexual assault laws. And at the forefront of this movement was Upendra Bakshi. It gave rise to a women's movement in India, sprouting a host of groups dedicated to empowering women. At last, people began to see gender-based violence for what it really is, a brutal act of power. Now, let's come to the 21st century and understand what feminism achieved in India. Now, Indira Jai Singh ji, due to the efforts of Indira Jai Singh ji, Domestic Violence Act law was passed in India. And due to the efforts of Meenakshi Arora, Vishaka guidelines were proposed. And then in 2013, Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act was passed. Due to the efforts of Brinda Grover and efforts of Kavita Krishnanji, they both played an important role in drafting the Criminal Law Amendment of 2013. Now, even after all these things, even after so much efforts from so many people, women in India still face so many difficulties. So now I would request Pooja to talk about the difficulties women face when it comes to education.
Thank you, Shivaj. Education is the most probable area where girls. There are many reasons for girls to drop out of school, but the most common ones are marriage, violence at school, pregnancy, poor sanitation, and domestic labor. Now I would like Divyansh to tell us about the violence that women face.
Thank you, Pooja. So, violence against women is a global phenomena and is recognized as a human rights violation. There are various types of violent crimes against women, but let's discuss about eve teasing and marital rape. So there's this term called eve teasing, which is used in India to describe sexual harassment of women by men in public spaces. These may include verbal abuse, physical abuse, obscene gestures, whistling, winking, staring, and other things. So even though it is quite common in India, only 1 in 10,000 cases is reported. Moreover, eve teasing is often viewed as normal, romantic, or even a moderate crime unlike rape or murder, despite the fact that it violates women's basic right to live in dignity. Furthermore, eve teasing can escalate into a much violent crime like sexual harassment, rape, or even murder. Now, because of this threat, women usually follow a culturally determined set of morality principles, which makes them because of which they dress modestly and regulate their movement. But we know such attempts are usually futile, and that no group of women are immune from being molested or raped. Now, India has the highest number of child marriages, despite child marriages being illegal under the Sarda Act of 1929. This idea of child marriage being used as a way of protecting women against rape is quite common in most parts of rural India. But people fail to realize that married women are also raped throughout the country. India is probably the only country where a husband enjoys the status of a god. The idea of Pati Parmeshwar, which literally means husband god, manifests itself in inequitable ways in the dynamics between a husband and his wife. Now, India has a sense of pride in having the lowest divorce rates in the world. But divorce is available as an option to women who are financially independent or have support of their families. So the research indicates that marital rape can have severe and long-lasting effects on women, which may include bruising or injuries to private organs, and some psychological effects may include depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even suicidal tendencies. Furthermore, government rejected the committee's proposal to amendment of the rape law to include criminalization of marital rape. They argued that they argued that criminalizing marital rape would weaken the institution of marriage and result in, clash of marriages and family in India. So because I don't think that sacredness of marriage should be a reason why a woman has to face abuse from their husbands. In India, marital rape is only a crime if the bride is a minor, and such cases are hardly ever reported. So, as we discussed about the how women is denied of the basic right to live in dignity, there are other things that women are denied, like abortion rights. So, I would like Kshitij to talk about the abortion rights in India.
Thank you so much, Divyansh. So we need to talk about the abortion rights of a woman, particularly during this time, because in March, the Parliament passed the amendment, proposed the amendment to the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1971. So let us try and understand what if these amendments are actually progressive or not. So if we see the draft of the amendment to the MTP bill, which was just passed in the Lok Sabha, and if we read the MTP Act, which was passed in 1971, so a lot of the language of both, the way it has been drafted, it suggests complete medicalization of an issue. This is looked at as a medical issue like an illness, whereas pregnancy is a normal physiological phenomena, and therefore termination of pregnancy should also be a normal process. And for this, there is no need to make it such a big deal or such a big issue. Now, it is sort of very unfortunate that it has taken us 50 years to understand the fact that the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act needed some changes. But still, these changes are very insignificant, insufficient, and what is being done is just the whitewashing of issues here, because very importantly, a lot of stakeholders haven't been consulted. And the way the proposals were made, it sort of showed that how patriarchal our society is, because the members of the committee only involved men. Now, under the MTP, the pregnant person does not have a choice. The pregnant person must seek permission. Now, if the permission is granted, then the doctor will conduct the procedure, else the doctor will not. So now this approach needs to change. So instead of certification, counseling is what is needed. Instead of prescribing MTP, the focus should be on providing MTP. And instead of gatekeeping, the focus should be on guiding. Now, to sort of understand what kind of problems women from different sections of the society might face, I got a chance to interview Kiran Deshmukh ji, who is a member of National Network of Sex Workers, and I asked her about what kind of problems they face when they sort of try or go for a termination of pregnancy. So she gave a very chilling answer to me, and I'm going to quote her. When women like us are pregnant, people question how we have become pregnant if we use condoms 99% of the time. The MTP Amendment Bill 2020 refers to any woman or her partner. We also have partners, but our partners change in 6 months and then change again in another 6 months. We change our partners if we fight and don't want to continue a relationship with them. But a condom is not used 100% of the time with a partner. If we want a child, we continue the pregnancy resulting from intercourse with that partner. But circumstances change, and sometimes we do not want to continue the pregnancy. When a sex worker is pregnant and goes to a civil hospital, the staff at the civil hospital knows that we do sex work. So first of all, we are discriminated against a lot. I have heard this multiple times, and I've thought about this as well. They say, you are a sex worker. Why do you want a child? You don't have a place to stay yourself, and you're going ahead and having a child? If it so happens that a pregnant sex worker is HIV positive, imagine how much she is discriminated against. We consider this form of discrimination as violence. And this violence will not end till we do not collectivize. We have to collectivize to fight against this violence. Collectivizing is very important. To end these issues, to end this violence, we really have to collectivize. We have to advocate for our rights. We have to converse with doctors and hospital authorities and assert our rights. The womb is mine. It is my right to decide to continue or to terminate the pregnancy. When I want a child, I will continue the pregnancy. And when I do not want a child, I will not. Doctors do not listen to us at all, especially doctors in civil hospitals. But when we collectively say the same thing, they have to listen to us and provide us services. वो कहते हैं ना, उंगलियों से ज़्यादा ताकत मुट्ठी में होती है. So now that we have understood that abortion is also a very important issue, and basic abortion rights are also not provided to each and every section of the women. Let us also sort of understand what other major rights are violated, and I would like Janvi to take over from here.
Thank you so much, Kshitij, for enlightening us about the knowledge about MTP Act. As he introduced, I'm going to talk about right to justice for rape survivors. We all are aware of the fact that rape survivors are often humiliated at police stations and hospitals, and they face significant barriers to get justice. So I'm going to briefly talk about 3 such cases where women are denied the right to justice and which will leave you in the state of anger as well as concern. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Hyderabad case. In this case, the police had claimed that the alleged 4 accused were shot dead, but it has not been proved yet. And it seems like an attempt to distract people from government's failure to safeguard women's rights. Secondly, a girl in Uttar Pradesh, Unnao district was raped, filmed, blackmailed, and murdered. 5 men killed her when she was on her way to rape case hearing. So you see, this is what happens to girl and the family when they want to get the right to justice. And lastly, I would like to talk about the Araria rape case, which happened very recently. So you would also see that even the COVID-19 could not prevent some men to do such inhuman activities. Despite of being raped, the girl was arrested herself instead of the men who raped her. So see how ironical it is. She was raped. She was arrested alongside 2 activists who helped her on the charges of disrupting court proceedings and using foul language. So I think we as a nation has to fight a lot to serve such women the justice they deserve. No, they're not just denied the right to justice, but they're also blamed sometimes for the assault committed on them. And some terrible remarks are also made by the guardian of law, Justice Dixit, of Karnataka High Court. He made terrible remarks indicating that that by accompanying the accused to the hotel and not objectifying to have a drink with him is the reason why the girl herself was responsible for the assault committed on him. He even stated that the complainant's claim of having slept after the perpetration of act because she was tired was unbecoming of Indian women, and that's not how they behave when they are ravished. So the activists wrote a letter, and there they stated that using words like ravish instead of sexual assault and casting aspersions on the character of women is the part of continuing historical narrative that has legitimized various forms of violence against women. So now that we have read and heard about various forms of violence against women and how they face so many barriers to get justice, now I'm going to talk about women who broke the stereotypes, who changed the game, and who are the true example of women empowerment. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Chetna Gala Sinha. This is an extraordinary story of women empowerment in rural India. She has founded a bank called Mandeshi Mahila Sahakari Bank in the Satara district of Maharashtra with active participation of illiterate rural women in 1997. She even has a B school where she trained women to become successful entrepreneurs. So now you see what the true meaning of women empowerment is. As Kshitij quoted, that feminism is uplifting all women. It's like collective upliftment. So here also she uplifts so many other women alongside her. Secondly, I'm going to talk about Sampath Pal Devi. Sampath Pal Devi is the founder of famous Gulabi gang. We all know that women are physically weaker than men to some extent, but when it comes to inner strength, nobody can beat women. One such example of firm determination and willpower is Sampath Pal Devi. Her Gulabi gang was found with the purpose of empowering women and teaching abusive men a lesson. Sampath Pal Devi and her gang's women have carried out many raids, beaten up abusive men and corrupt public officials, and they've almost always got success in improving their ways. And last but not the least, I'm going to talk about Yashika Dutt. Yashika Dutt is an Indian writer and journalist who currently lives in New York. She was compelled to hide her caste all along, terrified of her true identity being found out. This girl pretended not to be Dalit, and this took a heavy toll on the young girl's mind. So she wrote a book, Coming Out as a Dalit, where she finally accepted the fact that she was Dalit, and now she has been constantly writing about issues like gender, caste, and identity. And she also inspires so many women and people also that their gender and caste will never come in their path to become successful. So now that we have talked about such women who broke the stereotypes, I'm going to hand it over to Divyansh to talk about the survey we conducted on our topic, human rights and feminism.
Thank you, Janvi. So we conducted a survey to ask people what they thought about and what their perceptions were about the concept of feminism. And we got 86 responses. So I'm just going to discuss the reasons why we included the questions that we did include and what the responses we got. So firstly, we asked people about their age. We knew we were going to send these forms to the people we know, and they were going to be of our age group. So we just wanted to know that what the current generation thinks about feminism and if it is important or not. So as you can see that 90 almost majority of the people are 19 or below. The next thing we asked them was their gender. Men and women have different ideas and different perceptions about feminism and the rights that women are denied. So we wanted to know how different how different responses we would get based on the gender. So the first question that we asked the people were that who according to you takes the decision of aborting a child. So as Kshitij discussed that abortion rights are often denied to women, and how a woman does not have the right to her own body. So abortion rights, so according to the survey we conducted, the responses we got, 70% of people think that both the parents are the ones who take the final decision in aborting a child. But I would like to think that it is true, but in India, the final decision usually goes to the relative or the elders of the family. So the next question we asked was that, do you think female feticide has increased in the last 5 years? The responses we got were 48% people said maybe, and 29% people said no, and the least amount of people, like 23% of people said yes. So it is because people do not know if it has actually increased, and not because people know that more and more people are getting educated and they are learning about the importance of women and not just murdering them before they are even born. So as you can see in the on the right, there's a graph which shows sex ratio at birth of male per 100 female. In 2001, 107 males per 100 females. In 2011, it raised to 109 males per 100 female, and in 2018, it has risen to 112 males per 100 female, and it is still rising day by day, and people do not know about that, which is a big problem. The next question we asked them was, did you ever observe discrimination on the basis of gender in your school, college, or workplaces? Now, this is a fairly related question because everyone has, like the people we asked this question, they all have experienced school life and college life and, or are working. So the responses we got were that 50% people, almost 50% people observed or even faced discrimination on the basis of gender, and almost 50% people did not. Now, as much as I can remember, when I was in school, my teachers would, always tell the girls to tie their hair properly or dress properly, or wear skirts. Do not wear skirts actually, which just gives the idea that everyone, like that, even teachers have this patriarchy embedded in them, which makes them question that if a woman should, like how a woman should behave in a society and how a woman should behave in public. The next question we asked was that we all are given the basic human rights, but do you think women can utilize them equally? For example, doing a night shift job. So we all have heard that women usually avoid doing night shift jobs, and even if they do, their families are a bit skeptical about the idea of them going out at night. Now, as I discussed earlier that about eve teasing, so the risk of being eve teased is high during the night times because there are less people on the street, and it is dark, and there are more crimes during the darkness. So the responses we got were 50%, almost 50% people believe that women cannot utilize the basic human rights, like right to movement, which is a big issue again. The next question we asked was, do you think men take equal responsibility of taking care of children? So main reason of including this question was that when a child is born, a woman is usually forced to leave her job and take care of child, because they are perceived as nurturers. Women are perceived as nurturers, which is not a good idea, because this idea usually makes the child a little distant from his or her father. And as we got the responses, 41% people think that men only partially take responsibility of their children, and 29% people said they do not take any responsibility. The next question is that, do you think we should have more representatives in the parliament to uplift feminism? So we have discussed throughout the course of this presentation that how important feminism is, and that we still need in our country, and not in our country, just in the whole world. We need feminism. And the parliament usually discuss almost all kinds of issues, but when it comes to women's issues and women's rights or feminism, they are usually silent, which is not a good, which is a big issue. So there should be more representatives to talk about women's the problems women are facing in our country, and to come up with appropriate solutions. And 80% people agree about that. Now, the next question we asked was that, when it comes to improving women's lives, what do you think should the society focus more on? So there are a number of issues that women face, but we decided to include these four because these issues are still in our society, and not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas. So we included equal pay for equal work. As I researched, I found out that for every dollar a man makes, a woman only makes 80 cents. So there's a 20% pay gap. Access to legal abortion, as Kshitij talked about that how women cannot take they're not given the basic abortion rights, and there's a stigma around abortion, so they opt for illegal options of abortion, which is usually unsafe for them. Stricter laws for sexual harassment, domestic violence, and dowry. As I talked, and as Janvi said, that women are denied the basic right to justice. So, and the last thing is that parents should invest equally in education of the girl child. As Pooja said, that women have to leave the girls have to leave their schools and colleges because of various reasons. So I was pretty happy to see that majority of the people agree that all of these issues are top priority and important. The next question is that, do you think feminism is misunderstood? Now, this question is pretty popular nowadays, and like people think that feminism has changed. So I would like Kshitij to talk about this question and discuss about the responses we got.
Thank you so much, Divyansh. So the judges and all the panelists, we sort of put this question into our form because of the fact that, again, like Divyansh mentioned, that this topic is being discussed quite a lot, and particularly after the incident of the boys' locker room. And there are several influencers who are talking about feminism on YouTube and on Instagram. And there's been a lot of talk that how feminism has sort of drifted away from its original sort of idea. So I'm just going to quote one of the responses out of the 86 that we got. So like you can see on your screens, we got similar kind of responses. So I'm just quoting one of the responses. So the person says, I feel like the intention behind starting this whole movement was genuine, but many blow it out of proportion and misuse it. Now we need to understand that why this kind of sentiment is being fed into the minds of the young generation, or into the millennials or the teenagers. It's because of the fact that not many people are well read on the topic, and they sort of relate to the videos of the influencers. And also people think that feminism is about hating men, but that's not the case. So let us sort of try and understand why feminism is important and what is the way forward. So again, as you can see on the screen, feminism is important because feminism is not about women's rights over men. It is about the equality of women to men. Now, it is as simple as this statement. Feminism is not misandry. It is not about hating men. It is not about women getting a higher pedestal than men. It is about equal opportunities. It is about equal rights for women. Now, how can we achieve this, and what's the way forward? So first of all, we need to involve all the stakeholders. I talked about intersectional feminism. So intersectional feminism basically means involving the needs of sort of raising questions and raising the needs of all the sections of the women, be it Dalit, be it Adivasi women, or be it any other women for that matter. But also, when I say all the stakeholders, I also mean the LGBTQI community as well. So we need to sort of involve all the stakeholders when we talk about feminism and feminist movement. Now, secondly, we need to have fast track courts. Now, why is that? Because as Janvi mentioned, that how women in our country still do not get justice that they deserve. So we really need to have fast track courts so that a victim, so that women can get justice as quickly as possible and they do not go through the trauma again and again. Now, the third point is safety shelters for women. Now, there are a lot of women who face abuse in their households. There are a lot of women who are vulnerable. So we need to have a place where these women can, come, they can feel safe and feel confident about, about just being a woman. So I think these three things are very important, involving all the stakeholders, fast track courts, and safety shelters for women. Now, I'd like Janvi to sort of give the closing remarks for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Kshitij. I would like to conclude by saying that with the background and history of India, I feel fortunate that I'm able to be the part of this forum and to be able to sit at par with men discussing about human rights and feminism. Life is not a competition between men and women, it is a collaboration. And I'm so glad to be a part of team where my team male members are also supportive of the idea. And this is possible only because of the few women who raised their voice in the past and who gave us the courage to spread our wings. I owe this to them, and I hope we continue to respect women and treat them equally and not as an inferior gender. And I would also like to thank our mentor for guiding us throughout this 15 days internship program. Thank you so much. Now I would like to tell the panelists and the judges that we are done with the presentation and we are looking forward to question answer round.
Can you just stop sharing this PPT?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you team for the wonderful presentation and congratulate all the team members for their extraordinary efforts and work. Thank you so much. I would like to request Rajni, the mentor of Team Emancipators, to share her experience of these 15 days internship program.
I would first like to congratulate all my team members for giving a brilliant performance. I'm really proud of you all. And it's been a mixed bag of emotions, from anger to being happy, from being scared to ensuring that everything is moving in the right direction. So I'm very happy with the way my team members have been cooperative and open to feedback, which was a major thing I saw in them. They were very positive, very open to feedbacks, and they incorporated everything that I tried to tell them. So I can just say I'm really proud of them and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your views. I would like to request the jury members to share their experience and the views regarding the presentation, and if they want to ask anything from our interns.
Okay, sure. So maybe I can go first. So first of all, guys, again, I continue to get amazed with the amount of involvement that all of you've shown and the maturity beyond your ages that you continue to show. I mean, this is a different generation. I don't think we were even half as well informed or half as confident at this age as you guys are. So congratulations for I would say both the well thought material as well as the way you presented it. I did have a couple of observations and feedback, because while words of praise reinforce strengths, I think what really improves one is feedback. So therefore, let me point out a couple of things. I would have liked to see, otherwise a very well researched presentation, I would have liked to see a little more balance, a little more nuance in some of the arguments you made in favor of a particular law or against a particular law. So let's just take a few examples to make this more concrete. I think one of you talked about how the American women got their right, or the white women got their right to vote, right? And one of the points you made was the women actually got their right to vote because they realized that even the former slaves or the black men had got it. Do you see any irony in that argument? Where someone seeking equality is basically saying, oh, am I worse than a slave? So some of those historical aspects and nuances need to be appreciated. Also, while this is very broadly understood that women by and large around the world and in India have been deprived of their rights, have been discriminated against. So power to women, we need to do more. I would say one also needs to understand the more practical nuances. When you see some of the judges, right? Or when you see some of the parliamentarians not wholeheartedly support a law, don't assume that all of them are doing that because they have something against women. Is any one of you, the four presenters, aware of section 498A of IPC, Indian Penal Code? Any idea what that is? This is the Anti-Dowry Act, okay? A very, very rigorous act. Were you planning to say something? I see an audience, one of the presenters probably wanting to respond. Was that Kshitij? You wanted to say something?
No, sir.
All right. So I think because of the reactions or because of the sort of the very brutal way in which some of the brides and women were actually tortured and burnt alive and stuff like that, obviously the reaction was equally strong. And the same thing we see with anti-rape law, etc. What people miss out is the very blatant misuse that 498A had in the last 20 years, where unfortunately some women started to, make false accusations towards their husband, towards their in-laws, for no fault really of the in-laws, right? And the worst part of that law is everyone in that family could get arrested and the onus is on them to prove that they are not guilty, right? Our law basically says you are innocent until proven guilty. This law inverts it. It says you are guilty unless proven innocent, right? So one has to understand these nuances. I think you guys are young adults, and as you grow into the word, you need to take a more balanced approach to how the word works. Don't assume that everyone is against women, right? There are a lot of people like you and me who want to support women, but there has to be a balanced view that we have to appreciate. I think I've taken far more time than I wanted to, so I'll just pause here. Thank you.
So, sir, can I please respond to the suggestions that you gave?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, sir, regarding the first point of the black, the feminist movement in the 19th century, and also about black men being granted the right to vote. So actually, both the movements sort of intersected each other, like the right for black men and for black people, and also the feminist movement as well. But so we know how how prevalent sort of slavery was in America. And it was a very big achievement for black men to sort of get that right to vote. But at the same time, we also need to understand that the white women who actually, made things done, like they used to treat black men like anything. I mean, we can't imagine sitting here now. So that kind of get into the mindset of the women, because till the 1960s, 70s, 80s, the feminism movement was always about the rights of white women. They never talked about the rights of black women, or for that matter, any other category of women. So that's why we thought that, okay, by including this, we can make our point. And so regarding a second point about the Dowry Act, we did not include the Dowry Act particularly because of the reason that you laid down, that it has been misused a lot. And there were a couple of more such acts which are like very controversial and which has been sort of misused by women a lot in the recent past. So we did not want to sort of make a controversial presentation, I would say, and that's why we tried to keep it as simple as possible.
Fair enough. I appreciate the fact that you at least thought that through. All I'm pointing out is there are mixed aspects of other laws as well, including MTP. Think of it. On the one hand, you're trying to prevent premature termination of female, right, fetus, right? On the other hand, if you make MTP too liberal, you're probably helping some of the people who want to kill women, right,
Yes,
before
sir.
they're born.
Yes, sir.
So there has to be a balance. And I think some of the parliamentarians oppose too liberal an MTP for that reason as well. That's what I'm trying to point out. The balance aspect needs to be kept in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulate the boys, both Divyansh and Kshitij, for taking up this topic and supporting the women's rights and also feminism. It was very, very interesting to see how Kshitij and Divyansh presented it and supported the girls, both Janvi and Pooja. So, well done.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ask anything?
No. I think we have taken more time. So, and Meena can say something before we move on.
Ma'am, please unmute.
I would like to congratulate all four of the participants, and they did a fabulous job. I just want to ask one thing, since you gave an example of America as being the place where they fought, do you think that they are far ahead now on this and they've reached where they wanted, the feminist movement and rights and all? Or you think, because you took most of your examples for India-centric, which makes sense being here, but do you think, since that was an example given, that they are where they wanted to be, what you think they've achieved? Or are they still way back in getting the rights? And anybody who would like to answer that?
Okay, so ma'am, I'll take the question. So ma'am, what I think is because like I talked about the different phases of feminist movement. So that shows that women in America cared about their rights from the very beginning, and they asserted and they demanded their rights. Okay, it's also true that women in America, or for that matter anywhere else in the world, in the Western countries I'm talking about here, they did not get the right to vote. Like for example, Ireland and the countries like United Kingdom, they gave the right to vote to their women very late. But when we got independent in 1947, the women, women were granted the right to vote. So when we talk about the right to vote aspect of the thing, I think India was way ahead than America, or for that matter, any other country. But when it comes to other matters that we discussed, we still, I think, lag behind. But again, when we talk about right to abortion, then also there, I think we are way ahead than some of the Western countries, because in some of the Western countries, abortion, yeah, it is religion-based and it is banned. So women do not have that right, and women are constantly fighting for this right. So I think in that aspect as well, India is way ahead of the Western countries. But when it comes to crimes against women in India, when it comes to any other sort of, because in India we still think that a woman should not do a job. A woman's sort of place is in the house. So that has changed in America. And when we talk about, say, pay gaps as well, then also that has sort of, there's much less pay gap in America as compared to India. Because and also, ma'am, I'd like to sort of bring this point up as well. When we talk about, say, for example, chefs, we see that in restaurants, we have male chefs. But when we have to sort of have a cook in our house, we generally invite a woman. Why is that? It's basically because that job is considered, sort of extravagant and sort of, that a man can do the job. But when we talk, about a home and a man cannot take orders from a woman of the house, because generally a woman of the house is at the sort of, the malkin of the house, I would say, because generally the husbands are outside. So these things still exist in India, and I think we need to constantly fight for these things and make these little changes as well.
Okay, I'll just give you this thing to just make you aware. I remember some years back, I was somewhere in the West for a conference, and there were a lot of women from Midwest America and heads of very large companies. I wouldn't like to name them. And Hillary was fighting election that time. So it wasn't on the base. The one view of the women was, why should a woman be taking a man's job? So it's even in the West, it's a very, and these are women, and I'm talking about the Midwest especially. It's why should a woman be taking a man's job? So their own mind has not accepted it. So just wanted to make you aware of this. That's all. But it was beautiful. You presented very well. Thank you. Enjoyed hearing your views.
My question is, was the topic given to you or did you choose the topic?
I'm the representative of the group, so I would like to ask my team members that who would like to answer the question to actually prevent the chaos.
No. So, about the topic, human rights and feminism, was it given to you by Anon or did you choose the topic on your own?
Ma'am, we were given 6 topics. We have to choose out of them.
Okay.
So for me,
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now I would welcome Aarti ma'am to share her views on the session. Aarti ma'am.
Thank you very much. Very interesting research you people have done. Few of the things that I was thinking, because we have included this topic, I wanted to understand, just continuing what Raman has said, all have spoken about feminism and there are many laws to provide the protection of women. However, we often hear of some cases wherein men are also accused of all accusation of rape, dowry, harassment, domestic violence. There have been few cases wherein Supreme Court is also offered relief to men, but then we have seen various women going even after the apex of court to reverse their decision in spite of few women putting false accusation and lies. Do you think such cases also need to be covered under human rights?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I would like to answer this question. When we were discussing, when we were having like discussion among the group members, we were also discussing that there are also some aspects where some women misuse this right. Even I know someone who misused this right, where like if women say that he has raped me, this is considered to be like a proven fact. But ma'am, we cannot just think about that. We cannot really also like not think about women who are actually facing all of these crimes. So, ma'am, yes, we have, these are also like denial to human rights in some sense, like then that the men sometimes have to face some things which are really not like proven also, but they have to face because of their gender. So yes, ma'am, that should also be considered in the like denials for human rights.
Because being a teacher, I have seen many boys coming to me and complaining me ki ma'am, girls are taking advantage of what we are thinking of. Okay, my last question. I believe you have carried out some 86 surveys. How have you conducted these surveys and what are the challenges did you face during this activity? Each group is expected to have minimum sample size of 100. So it seems that you have some challenges achieving it. So what might be the reason?
Ma'am, so when we sort of were planning, discussing the questions, it took us a day. So, and we sent it on a weekend. And we sent it on all our sort of college groups and to all our friends. And a lot many people responded, but a lot many could not. And I think a lot many people did not respond because, again, feminism has become a very controversial topic, in the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. And I think people did not want to, respond to the questions because there were, some hard-hitting questions, I would say, in the form, because we were talking about the right to free, speech, and then abortion rights, and then if women should be allowed to move freely in night. So I think people might have seen the form and then they did not respond. And also, I think we tried to make up for it by sort of conducting an interview with Kiran Deshmukh ji. So we thought, okay, we are not getting a response, so that it would benefit us if we can conduct an interview of a person who's actually facing some hardships. So yeah.
Doesn't matter. Okay, Puneet, would you like to say?
So I have made some observations. I think first of all, it was an extensive research done, especially when they were talking about those waves of feminism. I really liked the kind of deep dive they did. And as Mr. Raman said, I think Kshitij spoke very well on such sensitive topics with so much confidence. I really liked his confidence. And this real-time interview with Kiran Deshmukh was a very unique and good idea. Really appreciate thinking out of the mind to go for a real interview to get actual practical insight. I mean, you touched upon this. I think whenever we are presenting, we need to present the other side of the story. You were saying that this is a controversial. I was really looking, from last couple of years, especially being very active on social media, I feel feminism has been misinterpreted and misused also. So I was very surprised that you guys did extensive research, but Sarabjit Singh case of Delhi, who you remember, right? That was missing. So probably whenever we do any presentation, presenting both sides of the coin would always lend a, so this story missing in your was a kind. So I think make it balanced, present it. There is nothing, we need to examine all aspects of it. And the last slide, which I was expecting was as a takeaways or the solution slide. Probably you mentioned somewhere in your last question. So I also want to, from a solution per se, do you feel that what the other respondents said about the two categories, 78% and 61%, do you think those are the effective solutions? I mean, the problems you highlighted, the history you highlighted, but from your perspective, all as a group, what do you think are the most important solutions?
Janvi, would you like to go first?
Actually, sir, I could not understand the question properly. Were you talking about how feminism is misunderstood?
No. I was talking about the solutions which you said that, I mean, I think one of you said that as per the respondents' question, there were two categories which got 78% and 61% responses. Do you concur with those as the best solutions, or do you feel there are other points also or other solutions also for this problem?
Are you talking about the survey in which we?
Yeah.
Okay,
the last question was the some categories which you feel were the solutions.
We discussed 4 issues that women face.
Yeah. So as per you as a group, what do you think are the most effective solutions
for those issues?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Firstly, we talked about equal like pay gap. There's a pay gap and equal pay for equal work. So this needs to be done by the like the people in the company have thoughts. They have their own views that women, because she's a woman, she cannot get paid equal as man. And the solution for that is, I guess, we need to spread awareness that just because she's a woman, we should not discriminate and pay her less. The second thing we talked about was abortion, legal abortions, which was Kshitij discussed about the legal abortion issues.
No. My thing is that what according to you was the most important solution. I'm not talking about the individual explanations.
Divyansh, what you do, you just message us the answer because our other group is waiting. So Puneet will be messaging this answer, whatever they are saying. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Deepa, I'm sorry we are getting late.
No problem. I know other group is waiting. Yeah, but well done, children. Congratulations.
Very good effort. Thank you very much.
Very good effort.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Prachi.
Thank you.
Yeah.